Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Loving obeisances unto the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is everything there is. Janmadyasya yato anvayaditaratascha artheshu abhignaswarat tene brahmahridaya adikavaye muhyanti yatsuraya tejo varimridam yatha vinimayo yatratra sargo mrisha dhamna svena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi. We meditate upon the transcendent absolute being from whom springs forth this universe. He is present in all that exists and yet distinct from everything. He is fully conscious and totally independent. He revealed to the first seer Brahma the import of Vedic wisdom. The material creation made of threefold gunas appears in him as though real like water in a mirage. Being eternally self-effulgent, he is ever free of the illusion Maya of the material world. We meditate upon him, the Supreme Being. Nigamakalpataror galitam phalam shukamukad amritadrava sanyutam pibata bhagavatam rasamalayam muhuraho rasika bhuvi bhavukaha. O devotees who relish a taste for divine love, Bhagavatam is the fully ripened fruit of the wish-yielding tree of Vedas, flowing as immortal nectar from Shuka Brahma Rishi. Go on drinking the sweet nectar day after day. We are now entering the 18th chapter of the 5th Skandha of Srimad Bhagavatam. We saw the holy descent of Ganga and also the description of the various varshas or divisions of Jambudwipa. So now we are going to see the various forms of the Supreme Being worshipped in each of these varshas. So we already saw that there are 9 divisions, 9 varshas, of which Bharat Varsha is the one which is the present day India, which is on the earthly realm where Ganga flows and where karma has special place. But it was also mentioned that bhakti and jnana, that is true surrender and wisdom, prevails in all the varshas, all the divisions. So we will go through each of the divisions and the way the Lord is being prayed to there. Every prayer is so beautiful. So first of all, as we know, the 9 varshas, in the middle is Ilavrita, which is where we saw Shiva first offer his beautiful prayers and teachings. Shiva resides in Ilavrita. Now on the north of Ilavrita, the 3 varshas that are there are called as Ramyaka, Hiranmaya and Kuru. On the south, there are 3 which are Hari Varsha, Kim Purusha Varsha and Bharata Varsha. And on the west is Ketumala and east is Bhadrashva. So these are again the 9 varshas. Now each of these varshas, we will see there are divisions. Varsha means a division here. In each of these divisions of the Jambudwipa, we see the beautiful forms of the Lord and how he is worshipped. So first we go to the eastern division, which is called Bhadrashva Varsha. And there, a great being called Bhadrshrava, who is the son of Dharma, or son of the deity who presides over righteousness, he offers worship to the Supreme Being Vasudeva, who is in the form of Hayagriva. Hayagriva is a very divine form which is with a man body and a horse head. And this form of Hayagriva is considered very special for the purpose of jnana. In fact, there is a beautiful prayer for Hayagriva. It says, Jnananandamayam devam nirmalas phatika kritim adharam sarva vidyanam Hayagrivam upasmahe. So what this prayer says is, I offer my worship to Hayagriva, who is Jnananandamayam devam, who is the very embodiment of pure wisdom, Nirmalas Phatika Kritim, who is pure as crystal. This wisdom is pure as crystal. Adharam Sarva Vidyanam, and therefore it is the foundation of all knowledge of spiritual and worldly nature. All of them have their foundation in the supreme wisdom, which is the very being of the Supreme essence, truth, and that Hayagriva I offer my obeisance. This is the prayer. It's a very auspicious prayer that is repeated by many. For instance, when invoking for the purpose of learning of any kind, because if we recognize that all learning is rooted in the Supreme Being, then every learning can be seen as connected to the Supreme Being. So this Hayagriva form is what is worshipped by Bhadrshrava. He says, "Hail to the Almighty Lord, who is in the form of Dharma and who purifies the mind." So this form of Bhagavan, Hayagriva, is pure wisdom which purifies the mind. So he says, "Om Namo Bhagavate Dharmaya Atma Vishodhanaya Namaiti." He is the very form of Dharma, righteousness, and he purifies the mind. And then Bhadrashrava goes on to say that the Supreme Lord, the doings of the Supreme Lord are marvelous through the Maya, because of this Maya, everybody is deluded, even though they see their own fathers and sometimes sons, that is, the young and the old, die in front of them. They go and cremate them. They yet contemplate pleasures as if they would live forever. They are running after pleasures, and they are even ready to contemplate evil deeds in order to enjoy pleasures, which we see all the time in the news. So this Bhadrashrava says it is quite marvelous and bewildering that by your own Maya, Jiva is committing all these evil deeds and not seeing that you are ever present and yet running behind these carnal pleasures, even though he sees everybody, young and old, dying. And then he says, "The learned have spoken of the world as impermanent or perishable, and the wise men who have realized the self have seen it." So there is a difference between the learned and the wise. The learned only speak in this way because they have read that the world is impermanent. They can read the scriptures and they say it. But the truly wise ones who have realized the self, they actually see it. So it is the difference between believing in God and seeing God. If one sees God, one doesn't have to believe in God. That is why it is said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." We don't have to believe in God if we can see the presence of God everywhere. So the learned can speak of this, the wise see it, and they say that this world is impermanent. They clearly see this and say this, and yet people are deluded by Maya and they are running behind this. How wonderful and bewildering is this Maya of yours! The creation, sustenance, and dissolution functions are all attributed to your Maya, and yet you are not the doer at all. It is another mystery that you are the non-doer, and yet every action is attributed to you. Again, it is not a mystery in one sense because everything is possible for you. All activities are done by this Maya, and this Maya is your own energy, and therefore this Maya makes everything possible even though you remain as the non-doer. None of this is a surprise really, though it looks mysterious. Therefore, such a supreme being that you are, here appearing in the form of man-horse, that is Hayagriva, who rescued the Vedas from the bottom of the ocean, which was stolen by the demon Madhu, I worship you. So this is the story it refers to, that there is a demon called Madhu who hides the Vedas inside the ocean. Again, it symbolizes the demon is the tendency of the ego to veil the true wisdom, and hiding it in the ocean is to hide it in chaos, in disorder. And that clarifying truth that emerges and destroys this demon Madhu and retrieves the true wisdom is Hayagriva. So that's the symbolism of this. So that Hayagriva, Bhadrashrava says, I offer my obeisances. So again, that's why the prayer says, Jnananandamayam Devam Nirmalas Patika Kritim Adharam Sarva Vidyanam Hayagrivam Upasmahe. So Bhadrashrava thus offers his prayers to Hayagriva. Then we move to the next Varsha, which is Hari Varsha. and it is to the south. Bhadrshrava is to the east of Ilavrita. Harivarsha is to the south, just like Bharatvarsha. And Harivarsha is a very beautiful Varsha because, as the name suggests, it's first of all named after Hari, the Supreme Lord. And there lives, it is said, the Supreme Being in the form of Narahari or Narasimha, which is an extremely auspicious avatar, again symbolizing jnana, the ferocious form of jnana that destroys ignorance in the form of the demon Hiranyakashipu. And there resides Prahlada, the great devotee, who is so wonderful, so exalted, and who brings glory to everyone. And he adores the Supreme Lord Narasimha in this Varsha, Hari Varsha. And these prayers are also beautiful. He says, O Narasimha, I hail to you, who is denoted by the syllable Om. You are the light of all lights. Burn down all the latent desires, swallow all the darkness. We offer our worship unto you, he says. The prayer is Om Namo Bhagavate Narasimhaya Namastejas Tejase Aviravir Bhava Vajranaka Vajradamshtra Karmashayan Randaya Randaya Tamo Grasa Grasa Om Swaha Abhayam Abhayam Atmani Bhuishta Om Kshraum. This is such a powerful prayer. Om Kshraum is a mystical symbol invoking Narasimha. It says Karmashayan Randhaya Randhaya. Cut all our latent desires and tendencies. Tamo Grasa Grasa. Remove all the darkness. Avir Bhava, and manifest with your full force and power and potency, and give us fearlessness. Om Swaha Abhayam Abhayam Atmani Bhuishtha. Give us fearlessness. Om Kshram. Very beautiful prayer. Prahlada's prayers are so powerful. The whole story of how Narasimha manifests to save Prahlada and eliminates Hiranyakashipu is the most beautiful episodes, one of the most beautiful episodes of Bhagavatam, which comes later in the 7th Skandha, and we will see this in great detail. But even a glimpse into the prayer of Prahlada will show the power of Prahlada and the avatar of Narasimha. So then Prahlad goes on to say the prayers of Prahlad are so beautiful. He says, may all be well with the world. May the wicked become gentle. His prayer is so compassionate. He says, may all be well with the world. May the wicked become gentle. May living beings only contemplate good to each other. And may their mind resort only to that which is good. And may all our thoughts and our intellect be fixed only on you without any motive. So again, such a beautiful prayer. The verse is also so poetic and beautiful. It says, Swastyastu Vishwasya Kala Prasidatam Dhyayantu Bhutani Shivam Mithodhya Manascha Bhadram Bhajatat Adhokshaja Aveshyatam no Matirapyahaituki. This is the verse, very beautiful verse. It says, Swastyastu Vishwasya, let the whole world be in well-being. Khalav prasidatam, even the wicked, let them become gentle. Dhyayantu bhutani shivam mithodhiya, may everyone only think of good for others. And then he says, Manascha bhadram bhajathad adhokshaja, O Supreme Lord, who is beyond all the senses, may the mind only dwell on you. Aveshyatam no matirapya haituki, and the intellect also only go toward you without any motive. That is the most important thing. Haituki, without any motive, without any desire. May we simply adore you. Because he says, goes on to say, if there be any attachment in our heart, let it be only for the loving devotees of the Lord. Because if we have attachment for anything else, may it be our house or spouse or children or wealth, all of that will only result in destruction, because they are all of the nature of perishing, starting with the body. Therefore, To be contented with bare necessities of life and to remain with no desire is to be in the blessed state, not to be loving objects of senses. Therefore, may we have no attachment to objects of senses or to relations, and may, if at all we have attachment, may it be only to the loving devotees of you. Why? Because he says then, if we have attachment to your loving devotees, then they, out of their great compassion, through our ears, they send into our heart the unique glory of your being. They, without we making any effort, simply sitting next to them and our ears open, they take all the effort to sing your glories, to talk about your teachings and your stories. And through our ears, they send to our heart the purifying accounts of you, which removes all impurities. Therefore, that is the only association we need. And if one is having this exclusive devotion to the Lord, then all the good virtues come automatically. But if one runs after objects of desire, then only destruction comes out of that. Therefore, may we have association with your devotees all the time. So, again and again, Bhagavatam glorifies the greatness of Satsanga. Here, Prahlad, such a beautiful prayer. Every line is beautiful. He first prays to Narasimha to manifest with his divine power and remove desires. Then he prays for the well being of the whole world, where everyone be devoted without any motive. Then he says, may association be only with your devotees and not with any other attachments. And then he says, why? Because they give us easy way to reach our heart and remove all impurities. And that is the way to blessedness, not running after the senses. Then he concludes by saying, as water is dear to the fish as their very life, so is Lord Hari the very life of all embodied beings. He says, Harirhi Sakshat Bhagavan Sharirinam Atma Jashanam Iva Toyamipsitam. He says, just as water is for fish, Sri Hari is for every embodied being. Therefore, may everyone only be surrendered to him, and may we renounce all attachment to home and to all other attachments of the body and mind, which only perpetuate fear and anger and pride and grief and so on, and perpetuate the cycle of birth and death. And instead, may we take refuge only in the feet of Lord Narasimha, he says. Hitva griham samsruti chakravalam Narasimhapadam bhajata kuto abhayam miti. He says, therefore, let's take refuge only in the Supreme Lord Narasimha. So this is the Hari Varsha. So we saw two Varshas. Now we move to Ketumala Varsha, which is on the west. Ketumala Varsha is the Varsha where the Supreme Lord is in the most beautiful enchanting form. He is more beautiful than even Kamadeva, the embodiment of love. And he is so enchantingly attractive and beautiful, and there he is adored by his consort Lakshmi or Rama. So Rama looks at the elegance of his lotus face, his beautiful arched brows, his playful glances, and his entirely graceful look, and she prays to him. She says, she starts by invoking a mystical symbol. She says, Om Hram Hrim Hrum Om. So this is a very mystical symbol again that invokes Bhagavan in this form. She says, Om Namo Bhagavate Hrishkeshaya. That is the one who controls all the senses, and he is the one who controls all the organs of actions, all the senses of perception, and all the inner faculties, which are the mind, the intellect, the ego, and memory, and who is also the personification of Vedas, who also is in the form of food that sustains the physical body, who is moksha or final beatitude itself, who is essentially everything there is, from the gross senses to the inner faculties of the mind and so on, to the food that sustains the body, to the wisdom that liberates attachment to all of this, and to therefore the very essence of everything there is. This is the Lord personified. And so Goddess Rama, the Lord, the consort of the Lord, says, women normally pray to you in order to get a husband who is very nice and very caring and so on, but they don't realize that any husband they can get is not going to be perfect, because nobody is independent. Everybody is dependent on you, because they are all afraid. They are all, any husband a woman can get is always going to be only caught in impermanent body and caught in fear. So the one who is surrendered unto you is the only one who is rid of this fear, and therefore you are the only Lord to seek. So this is why it is always said that the devotee looks upon the Supreme Lord as the true husband. That is the mystical poetry always, that looks upon the Lord as the beloved and the devotee as the consort, and that is the mode in which Lakshmi here offers prayers. And we have many great devotees who have taken this mode of expressing their love for the beloved as the consort. And therefore Lakshmi says, one who adores your lotus feet alone succeeds in attaining all the objects of desire. Because if instead they worship you even with any desire, as we saw, as she says, if they worship you desiring a good husband or desiring any other goal, they will only be dissatisfied eventually, because even if they are bestowed with whatever boon they are asking for, it will all be temporary. So if they ask for anything other than you, they will only be afflicted. And yet women ask for many other temporary goals. So she is speaking from the perspective of women here. And this is true of men too, of course. So therefore Lakshmi says, the intelligent one only asks for you and not for any other boon, which are all temporary. And then she goes on to say that everyone, because Lakshmi symbolizes wealth, she says, everyone in this world is after me, but I do not like to be with anyone other than those who are devoted to you, because Lakshmi is always called as Chanchala. In other words, she moves all the time. Even if anyone is seen as wealthy in this world, as long as they are not devoted and they are only devoted to the money and not to the Supreme Being, then their wealth is always impermanent and it is taken away either within the lifetime or suddenly at death. So she says, I do not stay with anyone for long except your devotee who are always holding you, and therefore I am with them through you. But then she also says, even though I reside in your very heart, I know that I am deprived of your grace in comparison to your devotees. She says out of sweet love that your devotees are blessed with your grace so directly that she says in a very beautiful way, poetically, that I do not even have the grace that your devotees have. Even though she resides in the very heart of the Supreme Lord, she says the glory of the devotees is such that they hold you as their very heart, whereas I am simply residing in your heart, and therefore I do not have the same way in which your devotees carry you, and this is the exclusive privilege of your devotees, and it is no cause for wonder too, because everything happens as you will. So she again offers this beautiful prayer. Then we go to the Ramyaka Varsha, which is on the north, and in Ramyaka Varsha there is the Manu called Shraddha Deva, or also called Satyavrta. He offers a beautiful prayer here to the Lord in the form of the divine fish or Matsya. So here again in this chapter we beautifully see the various avatars of the Supreme Lord given a glimpse through these prayers. Some of them we have seen already and many of them will come only later. But we see here, for example, Matsya avatar or the fish. So he says again, O Supreme Lord, hail to you, who is denoted by Om and who is in the form of the divine fish. He says, Om Namo Bhagavate Mukhyatamaya Namaha Maha Matsyaya Namaiti. So Matsya is the word for divine fish, the first avatar of the Supreme Lord. It comes later in the 8th Skandha, the whole story, the episode, and this whole episode is the origin of many other stories in different other traditions as well. This is the story of Manu, who at the time of dissolution of earth is asked to make an ark, make a huge boat, and in that boat he is asked to take all the species, and the divine fish avatar Matsya guides this boat through the waters of dissolution until dissolution is over and waters recede. And this story is of course seen as Noah's Ark, and so many other native traditions also carry this story. And this is originally coming from the Bhagavatam, which refers to Matsya avatar of the Supreme Lord who does this great Leela. And therefore, this Manu Satyavrta, who was the one who carried all the species in the boat, guided by the Lord, he is now residing in this Varsha, Ramyaka Varsha. And so he offers this prayer. He says that your form is unseen because you move about within the body as the very air of the being, and you are the very embodiment of Vedas, and you are the ruler of the whole universe, and you control the world like a showman controls a puppet. He says, how just as the puppeteer controls the puppet show, he controls the entire world, and yet nobody sees you, and you are the life giver, life giving principle of all species, starting from the smallest ants all the way to Brahma, and you hold everything in your hands, and you guided me with a cord connected to the ark to make sure that all the species were protected. Hail to you, O Supreme Lord. He says, Jagat Prana Ganatmane Namaiti, the very life of the whole universe, I offer obeisance to you. Then we move to Hiranmaya Varsha. Hiranmaya Varsha is where a divine being called Aryama offers prayer, and here the Lord resides in the form of Kurma, or the divine tortoise. So Hiranmaya, it says here, Hiranmaya api Bhagavan nivasati Kurma tanum. Kurma means tortoise. So here the beautiful tortoise avatar, Kurma avatar. So he says, hail to you the divine tortoise, possessed of a form of pure sattva, and the most ancient omnipresent Lord, support of all. He says, Om Namo Bhagavate Akuparaya Namo Bhumne Namo Namo Avasthanaya Namaste. He says, the most ancient being, the omnipresent, the support of all, I offer my obeisance to you. Then he goes on to say, the objective world, which is only through your Maya, cannot be estimated by anyone, and you alone are all the beings, he says here. So every prayer, as we can see, describes different aspects of the Supreme Being. One describes the Maya, one describes the grace, one describes the glory of the devotees, and so on. Here he describes how every aspect of the manifest universe is you. He says, every creature, every mammal, every bird, every region, heavenly region, earth, the mains, the rishis, and then the mountain, the river, the ocean, the islands, the stars, everything is simply you. You alone appear as all this. You possess numberless names and forms, and yet the great sage Kapila categorized everything to 24. So as we saw Sankhya Yoga in the third Skandha, where Kapila captured everything beautifully in 24 categories as Sankhya Yoga. And so here he refers to that, Aryama, and says, even though your manifestations are infinite and countless, Kapila, the divine sage, was able to categorize it in 24 ways. Hail to you. And that's how he prays. So then we move to the Kuru Varsha, which is also in the north, and there the Lord is being prayed in the form of the divine boar, which is Varaha, by Mother Earth herself. She says, hail to the divine boar. So here it says, Uttareshu cha Kurushu Bhagavan Yajna Purushaha Krita Varaha Rupa Aste. So the Varaha, as we have seen also in the third Skandha, is Yajna Purusha. He is the very embodiment of sacrifice. And so here in this Kuru Varsha, he is residing as the Yajna Purusha Varaha, and therefore Mother Earth, because as we remember, the demon Hiranyaksha takes the entire Mother Earth under the ocean and the dissolution waters, that is, and Varaha avatar goes and retrieves Mother Earth. And so that's the story, again symbolizing the supreme wisdom and the principle of sacrifice that restores order by taking the very existence, which is what earth is, out of the disorder or the chaos, which is the waters of the dissolution, back into existence through the supreme wisdom. So this avatar, Varaha avatar, is glorified here by Mother Earth. So she says, "Hail to the divine boar, who is known only through mantras, the deity presiding over all sacrifices, the supreme person. Hail to him who is ever pure." So she says, "Om Namo Bhagavate Mantra Tattva Lingaya Yajna Kratave." So he is the very embodiment of mantras and the sacrifices yajna. And then she says, very beautiful prayer again, she says, all those who are well versed in rituals, who know the true meaning of yajna, they, just as fire is present in all pieces of wood, but only the experts know to use the right stick to bring the fire out of the fire hidden inside the wood. Similarly, you are present in all beings, and yet the wise ones are able to churn within by the discipline through which they remove attachment, purify the mind, and reveal you as the essence of all that there is. And therefore, she says, those whose intellect has become capable of keen discernment through yoga, that is, through all the various practices of regulation and meditation and so on, they are able to perceive you, the Supreme Self, and also the various aspects of Maya or Prakriti, the gross elements, the senses, the time, and the sense of doership, all of that which comes about, which are all part of Maya, and yet you are unconnected to it. And she gives a very beautiful example here, which is the first time we see this example. She says how everything happens in your presence because of you, and yet you are the non-doer. We have seen this before, this principle, but here the example Mother Earth gives is, it is like how an iron moves on its own in the presence of a magnet, even though the magnet doesn't do anything. So the presence of the magnet causes the iron to move, and yet it cannot be said that the magnet is doing any action to pull the iron. So she says, similarly, your very presence brings forth this energy of Maya through which all activities happen, and yet it cannot be said that you are the one who is doing all the activities of any kind. Therefore, you remain as a mere looker, just as the magnet simply remains, while in your presence Maya operates, this just like magnetic energy operates and brings forth all the various beings and the universe. So she says, therefore I bow to that omnipotent Lord who has here assumed the form of the divine boar Varaha, and who retrieved me, the Mother Earth, at the end of your tusk from the demon Hiranyaksha, which we saw the story in the third skandha. So with this chapter ends. So this chapter, by describing all the various varshas, how beautifully describes the various prayers. Again, to quickly summarize, we saw Bhadrshrava glorify the Supreme Lord in the form of Hayagriva, who is embodiment of Jnana. We saw Prahlada glorify the Supreme Lord in the form of Narasimha, and that is one of the most beautiful prayers. We saw the prayers. Then we saw Mother Lakshmi or Rama glorify the Lord in Ketumala Varsha. And then we saw Manu, Satyavrta, glorify the Lord in the form of divine fish Matsya. Then we saw Aryama glorify the Lord in the form of Kurma or tortoise. And then we saw Mother Earth glorify the Lord in the form of boar or Varaha. We have only one Varsha left, which is called Kim Purusha Varsha, and there we will see a very beautiful devotee everybody knows about, Hanuman, glorify the Lord, who is there in the form of Sri Ram. So this is the next and the last Varsha remaining, which comes in the next chapter. So far now we have seen all these other forms of the Lord, and thereby we also get a glimpse into the various pastimes which are only alluded to here, which we'll see in great detail as we go forward. So with these prayers, this chapter concludes. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.